Madam Speaker, and I yield to the gentleman from Maryland, the Majority Leader, for the purpose of announcing next week's schedule.
I thank my friend, the Republican Whip, for yielding. On Monday, the House is not in session. On Tuesday, the House will meet at 12:30 p.m. for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business. On Wednesday, the House will meet at 10 a.m. for legislative business and recess at approximately 5 p.m., Madam Speaker, to allow security sweep of the House chamber prior to the President's State of the Union address. The House will meet again at approximately 8:35 p.m. in a joint session with the Senate for the purpose of receiving an address from the President of the United States. On Thursday and Friday, the House is not in session to give time for the Republican Issues Conference to occur in Baltimore, Maryland. We will consider several bills under suspension of the rules. The complete list of suspension bills will be announced by close of business tomorrow. In addition, Madam Speaker, we will consider H.R. 3726, the Castle-Nugent National Historic Site Establishment Act of 2009, and H.R. 4474, the Idaho Wilderness Water Resources Protection Act, introduced by Mr. Minnick and Mr. Simpson. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. And Madam Speaker, I'd ask the gentleman if he could comment on some of the press reports that we've seen this morning about the Speaker's statement that this House and you will not be bringing to this House the Senate health care bill for consideration. I yield.
Well, I didn't see the Speaker's statement, so I can't comment specifically on it, but I can say this to the gentleman, that as the gentleman knows, there are significant critical differences between the House and Senate bills, and we have been working on trying to bridge the differences that exist, and we are still in that process.
I thank the gentleman, and I'd ask, Madam Speaker, I would first preface the ask by saying that this country saw a pretty extraordinary election in Massachusetts a few nights ago. And from all reports, it seems that part of the outcome of that election was due to the health care bill and the difficulties with which the gentleman's side has had in passing the bill. We on this side, Madam Speaker, would say there's been no bipartisan effort to pass a health care bill. And so if we are going to see a resolution of the differences that the gentleman refers to, those differences clearly being on the side of his side of the aisle, because, Madam Speaker, we feel continued to be left out of the process. So I'd ask the gentleman if he is not decided on whether he's bringing up the Senate bill or the House bill again, will there be the process, will we see the process start over? Will we see his side take the message from the Massachusetts election to involve Republicans in discussion over the health care bill and have a transparent process the way we believe ought to happen, as well as I believe the American people think should happen? I yield.
Well, I thank the gentleman for his question and all the premises that he adopts in prefacing his question. I don't want my silence to be presumed as agreeing to his premises, which I think are inaccurate. Having said that, first of all, of course, there have been extraordinary exposure of the health care bills, both in the House and the Senate, to public discussion, public debate, public information. I've been online for over 4 months, 5 months really now. So I would, extraordinary number of hearings held on this over the last 2 years. And as the gentleman well knows, his party's candidate for president and my party's candidate for president, who is of course now President of the United States, both indicated they thought health reform was necessary. So it received extensive debate by many other candidates as well during the course of the election. The gentleman is well aware because members on his side have talked about it, members on my side have talked about the number of Americans who don't have insurance, the number of Americans who are being forced out because of cost, the number of small businesses who are being confronted with 10, 15, 20, 25% premium increases. So the gentleman is well aware of the fact that health funding and health coverage is a challenge for our country and for our citizens. The gentleman mentions the election. The election, obviously, that occurred in Massachusetts, like every election, dealt with many issues. My own view is that Americans are most focused, as we need to be, on the creation of jobs, making sure that Americans get back to work, have a livelihood that they can support themselves and their families. I think they're very concerned about that. They're also concerned about the fact that we pass a health care bill. I've just read a poll, an exit poll, that indicates that the majority of voters who had voted for Obama but voted for the new United States Senator-elect from Massachusetts believe that we ought to pass a health care bill. So obviously their vote for the new senator was based upon something other than that particular issue. So obviously there were a number of issues that impacted on this election. But let me say again that almost all the candidates running for president last time, when they articulated a focus on national issues, focused on health care and the need to make sure that health care was available to all of our citizens. Now, as it relates to the gentleman's bipartisanship, the gentleman was quoted apparently just a few days ago about referring to our meeting. Our meeting, of course, dealt with a one-page recitation of 3 or 4 proposals, many of which are in the health care bill that we passed this House in one fashion or another. Notwithstanding that, of course, as you know, no Republicans voted for the bill. I was not surprised at that, frankly, because in February, apparently not based upon the specifics of a proposal, because that was specifics of a proposal were not on the table till the summer. Your campaign chairman, Pete Sessions, said Republicans told Republicans that they need to get over the idea that we're participating in legislation and ought to start thinking of themselves as an insurgency instead. He was quoted in the Politico, House GOP bullish at Virginia retreat, February 2nd, 2009, as saying that. Furthermore, Senator Jim Imhoff on the Hugh Hewitt show, 7/23/09, said, "We can stall it." And that's going to be a huge gain for those of us who want to turn this thing over in the 2010 election. Senator Jim Imhoff, as I said that. And then Senator Jim DeBent said, also in July of 2009, if we're able to stop Obama on this, referring to health care, it will be his Waterloo. It will break him. Very frankly, I tell my friend that I've discussed with him and with Mr. Blunt, my good friend, who was his predecessor and with whom he worked in the Whip organization, and asked him to participate with us. I did that early this year. I did it a little later in the year, sometime before I met with you as well, in trying to discuss was there a way forward to work in a bipartisan fashion. Unfortunately, that did not result in a bipartisan fashion. I will tell my friend on a smaller, more defined matter, the Children's Health Insurance Program, I spent about 100 hours trying to work with many on your side of the aisle to try to get, in the last Congress, to try to get bipartisan agreement on moving children's health insurance. And as I'm sure you recall, because you weren't with us on that issue, we couldn't get bipartisan agreement. So the answer to your question is I would like to have bipartisan discussions moving forward on this issue. But I have concluded from my experience over the last year, and not just these, I quote 3, but there have been many other statements as well, that indicate that opposition for opposition's sake has been adopted, at least by some on your side, as a strategy and as a tactic. I think the losers are not so much Democrats in that context. I think the losers are the American people. They expect us and want us to work together towards resolving the issues that confront them, one of which is health care. They know it's an issue. I read the results in Massachusetts, but I will tell you I've also read the polls which, when asked, not so much about a bill, but whether or not health care reform is needed in this country, a very significant majority of Americans respond they think it is. They think that when they're denied coverage for pre-existing conditions, that's a problem. They think when their child becomes 26 years of age, or now 23 years of age and out of college and doesn't have insurance, they think that's a problem. They think that when they have a very serious illness costing them thousands and thousands of dollars, that an insurance company telling them, sorry, your cost too much, we can no longer insure you, they think that's a problem. When they go deeply into debt for health care costs that aren't covered by their insurance company and have to declare bankruptcy and put their home at risk, they think that's a problem. So yes, I tell my friend that these are issues we would like to work together on, and we hope that can happen.
I thank the gentleman, and I take the gentleman's comments to heart that he wants to do what's right by his constituents and the people of this country. But the question we have before us, the question that the voters of Massachusetts had before them, just like the voters in Virginia and New Jersey, had a lot to do with the health care bill that this House deliberated upon and passed, and the health care bill that the Senate deliberated upon and passed. And, Madam Speaker, I would say to the gentleman, there is very little disagreement among the pollsters that have tested where the American people are on these health care bills. They are opposed to these health care bills. And you may insinuate that some of the comments that have been made by individuals in this body or the other on our side of the aisle were meant to obstruct. But I can tell you, tell the gentleman, Madam Speaker, that the American people right now want this health care bill defeated. They want health care reform, but not in the way that has been constructed under either one of these bills. And if I recall, and I appreciate the gentleman's willingness to meet with me several months ago, and I don't want to take his comments as being dismissive of our proposal because I handed him a summary. But I can tell the gentleman right here is the House Republican bill. And there are elements in this bill we can both agree upon. The plan is still before us. And if we take into consideration that, we've got a plan. The public doesn't like the gentleman's plan. And flash forward to a discussion that the gentleman and I had on the floor. I believe, Madam Speaker, that the gentleman told me it was not worth his while to engage in conversation with Republicans because we would not embrace the public option. I would tell the Speaker, Madam Speaker, I'll tell the gentleman, we still don't embrace a public option. We don't embrace it because it is a path to single payer. So I'd ask the gentleman again, the Speaker earlier today said, quote, I don't think it's possible to pass the Senate bill in the House. I don't see the votes for it at this time. I'd ask the gentleman, Madam Speaker, if that is an accurate statement that we can then count on, and I yield.
I don't know about counting on. I don't know what you mean by counting on. I think if the Speaker's comments this morning, you asked me if it was an accurate statement. I think she believes that's an accurate statement in terms of where the votes are today. I responded, as I told the gentleman, there are substantial differences. We're discussing those differences, as we have been for some period of time. If the gentleman, let me make another comment. The gentleman's very animated and very happy, as I would be in his position, about the results of Massachusetts. As we were very happy about the results in New York 23, where the health care bill was also at issue, as the gentleman knows, in a district that we hadn't won for 150 years, just a couple of months ago. And as the gentleman knows, we won that district. in a district, as I said, unlike Massachusetts, that we had not won in 150 years. But let me say something. Your candidate, who did win, supported the Massachusetts plan, which has great similarity to the plan that he now opposes. So it's somewhat ironic that we would take that as a bellwether, because he, as a member of the state Senate, he actually voted on a plan that, much like our plan, tried to reach the objective of covering all people. So he's already voted for a plan like that. He's indicated he's not going to vote for this plan. I understand that. But it's not like he hasn't got a record of wanting to achieve the objectives that the bills that are under discussion are trying to achieve.
I thank the gentleman. I would respond simply by saying most indicators are the voters of that Commonwealth voted for Mr. Brown because of his stances. And one of those stances was that he would vote against the Senate or the House health care bill as they were constructed. And I agree with the gentleman. We need to do something about health care. I would remind him that it is the CBO who has pointed out that our Republican plan is the plan that actually does reduce health care premiums. That's where we started this whole discussion, was to reduce health care costs for the American people and continue to reform the system so we can maintain the quality we have. Madam Speaker, I just say that it is time, I think, for this body to finally listen to the American people and what they are asking us to do. Run this body in an open and transparent way, stop the backroom deals, the Cornhusker kickbacks, the Louisiana purchases, and make it so that this is once again the people's body. And we can all then deliberate out in the open, agree where we can agree to produce the positive reforms that the people expect. With that, Madam Speaker, I'd ask the gentleman what his intentions are, or what he thinks we can see in this House as far as an attempt to address the issue that the Majority Leader said was the #1 issue on the minds of the voters in Massachusetts as well as the country, and that is the economy. Before we left for the winter break, we had a bill that came up that was dubbed a jobs bill. There was a lot of difficulty, I know, on his side in mustering the needed votes to get it passed. And I was wondering, is there legislation he has in mind that will be offered to address the situation that Americans confront, which is double-digit unemployment? And I yield.
I thank the gentleman for the question. And in answer to his question, we passed a jobs bill through this House in December. It's pending in the Senate now. We believe that that would substantially move forward on creating jobs. It's not the answer, but it is one of the answers, we think. It focuses, as the gentleman knows, on infrastructure, which we think is a very important initiative that gets people working immediately, jobs here in America. We think that's very important. It also tries to help states so they're not laying off teachers and policemen and firemen. We think that's very important as well. But let me say something. I get a little confused, and perhaps these facts are not well known to you, but I thought I would remind you of these facts. We pursued an economic program that your party put forward from 2001, 2003 on for 8 years. Now, while the people gave us the majority in the House and the Senate in 2006, obviously President Bush threatened to, or did in fact, veto any changes that we made in economic policy. That economic policy, which you were a very strong supporter of, and your party was a very strong supporter of, you continued to mention jobs. So I want to make sure you know these statistics. In the last 3 months of the Bush administration, under the economic policies that not only did you pursue then, but you still want to pursue, because in fact the proposals that you have made essentially mirror the proposals that were made in 01 and 03. Those proposals were touted by you and others. I'm not going to go through all these quotes, as going to grow the economy, create jobs, and have a robust growth in our economy. In November and December and January, that policy which you pursued lost 2,019,000 jobs in 3 months. And we confronted the worst recession, the Great Recession, if you will, worse than at any time in 3/4 of a century. And it somewhat confounds me that you still, your party, not you necessarily personally, presents an economic policy which was the poorest job-creating administration 8 years since Herbert Hoover, an average of approximately 4,000 jobs per month. You need 100,000 just to stay even. Now, I will tell the gentleman, since the Recovery Act, which you nor your party voted for, since the Recovery Act, let me tell you what the last quarter was. Perhaps you know. We still have not succeeded in growing jobs. So we haven't had success. But we've had great progress. Let me tell you how much progress. Remember, I told you you lost in the last 3 months under your economic program 2,019,000 jobs. The last quarter, we lost 208,000 jobs. Quarter, 3 months. That's way too many jobs. We want to be creating, as the Clinton administration did, on average 220,000 plus jobs per month. 22 million in total over 8 years. So that I tell my friend that when the gentleman says we haven't had progress on this, those figures, in my view, belie that assertion. In fact, we've made progress. Not only that, the stock market is up 60%. It's had a couple of bad days. It's up 60% since we adopted the Recovery and Reinvestment Act. It had a minus growth under your economic policies during the 8 years of the Bush administration, minus to the extent it decreased in value, so that the investment I had in 2001 was about 26% less valuable in December of 2008. Contrast that to the Clinton administration. In its 8 years, the value of your stock portfolio or investments went up 226%. That's a 250% difference. So I tell my friend that we have taken very substantial action. We're going to take more action, because until we get Americans back on the job, till we get America growing so that it creates the kind of jobs our people need and must have to support themselves and their family, we're not going to be satisfied. So yes, we passed a bill last month which you and your party voted against. We think that's unfortunate. And if you have ideas, I'd love to sit down with you again and discuss your ideas. Very frankly, however, some of the ideas we've discussed to date are some of the same ideas that, in my opinion, led to not such a robust, job-creating economy. In fact, as I said, the worst economy we've seen in 75 years. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, Madam Speaker. And first of all, I know that it is tempting for the gentleman to delve into the past, comparing the Bush policies to the Clinton policies. But I know the gentleman realizes we are in the year 2010. We have new challenges before us. And I would say that the piece of information left out by the gentleman is the fact that it was his party that controlled Congress during some of the period in which you cite the job loss. And in fact, there have been 3.6 million jobs lost just since January of 09. I would then say to the gentleman, as far as the stimulus bill that you speak of.
Well, the gentleman yield just on your assertion that we were in control.
No, I will not.
The gentleman agree?
I will yield at the end of my statement. And what my point is, that the stimulus bill that passed almost a year ago there is growing consensus here that it was not sufficiently targeted towards job growth. And in fact, even the portion of infrastructure spending that the gentleman and his party and this White House decided upon, the design of that spending, the Associated Press has come out with a study indicating it did not grow employment at the local level in the communities which we represent. So if we understand and know that that is not the way to grow jobs, that is the design of the stimulus bill, why would we vote for stimulus 2? And in fact, I would remind the gentleman, as I know he remembers, the bipartisanship around the stimulus 2 vote in December was against the bill. As well over 30 of his members on his side of the aisle voted against the bill. Because again, I believe it is trying to get it right this time. And so instead of the gentleman's continuing to refer to years ago, I would remind him that we have presented to him as well as to the President a Republican no-cost jobs plan. And the gentleman has dismissed that document and that plan, saying that there is nothing for free, that we shouldn't be talking about things that we could do together that don't cost anything. I would say to the gentleman, the President himself has said that within the passage of 3 trade bills sitting in this body, we could see the creation of 250,000 jobs. We have had discussion on this floor about whether those trade bills are coming forward. 250,000 jobs at no cost? Seems to me we really should go about doing that, as well as the other items that we listed in our no-cost jobs plan that the House Republicans have put forward. And I yield to the gentleman.
I thank the gentleman. First, let me observe that the gentleman, I don't blame you at all for not wanting to look back in history. I wouldn't want to stand on that record either. But it's important to look at history so that we don't repeat the same mistakes, that the assertions that were made for the policies that you pursued of great growth and economic expansion, which did not occur, that's why I pointed out, because frankly your proposals mirror those that have been made in the past, and the premises that you have pursued are the same that you're pursuing now. It is instructive, I think, for the American people and for us who represent them to look at what worked and what didn't work. Your party unanimously opposed the Clinton economic policies. Mr. Armey, an economist who was your majority leader, said that they would fail miserably. In fact, they succeeded mightily. They created those 22 million jobs that I said. In fact, in the last year when there was a slowdown, created 1.8 million jobs, as opposed to losing 3.8 million jobs under the last year of the Bush administration. I think it's instructive to see what worked and what didn't. So that is why I refer to it, not because I think that will solve our problems going forward. I agree with the gentleman. What is important is, what are we going to do now? But we would be fools, as the writer said, to continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. So I say that to my friend, when he asserts that we were in charge in 07 and 08, he and I both know that economic policy was not changed. Why? Because the President of the United States, who had the veto pen and the votes to sustain a veto,